Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Ashes of Creations development update video. As always, it is my goal to take their long format streams and condense it into an easy to consume video for those of you that may not have 3 hours to sit through their update stream. Now, they started off this live stream with an interesting little spooky cinematic. There was a spider in it, so naturally I was horrified, which was just a precursor for the makeover that Margaret got. Now, first up is the YouTube comment highlight from Spacebrain asking if there will be advanced options for HUD customizations and if there will be hotkeys.
Absolutely. Customization of UI elements, especially on the HUD, is like a top desired aspect of our UI team. Colby and Grat and Jeff and Natalie and Drew, they're all working towards having the most customizable options when it comes to those types of things, and being able to quickly change that on the fly, given the PvX nature of the game, as well as the different styles of combat that's available, is something that's highly desired. So I know I always enjoy when I have maximum flexibility in the customization options of my UI, because UI is a very subjective thing, and it's constantly a topic of how we can, present the default appearance of the UI, but also in the settings allow for pretty much, carte blanche on what options are available to the player to choose.
Then they announced that they're doing a 24-hour donation stream. There'll be a pre-game stream where the developers play a variety of games. They'll be doing a 24-hour Pathfinder stream set in the world of Ashes of Creation. Now, they are tying in the actual Ashes of Creation's lore into the story. So if you're interested in the lore, make sure you tune in for it. If you don't have 24 hours to, do that sort of thing, don't fret, because I will be watching it myself. I'll be releasing a video discussing the lore that they revealed during the stream. Now, what might motivate you to tune into the stream is that you have a chance to win Alpha 2 keys. They're going to be giving out 10 Alpha 2 keys, among other rewards, and you get the chance to donate, which will affect how the stream plays out. Not that we need any excuse to donate money to a worthwhile cause, right? Then, naturally, they moved on to discuss PvP and griefing, which seems to be the theme of discussion in the community for the last month. It's been a point of contention in the community lately. I released a video just a couple days ago about this topic, giving my thoughts, so if you want to go check that out, I'll include a tag in the video right now. Steven wanted to take the time to encourage people that are new to the community to check out the wiki, ask questions on the forums, ask questions on the Discord, and get informed on the game before you make a judgment on it. Which is a fair point. There are tons of people that see 1 or 2 bits of information about the game that may or may not even be true, in which they don't like, and then they go off half-cocked talking craziness about something they don't have the full information on. Now, there is a ton of information to try and absorb about the game. Trust me, I know. I came into the Ashes of Creation's development later on than a lot of people did, especially other content creators. And one of my biggest hurdles is trying to go back through years of live streams and development updates and forum posts to make sure that all my information is correct before I make a video. It's tough. What I will say is the Intrepid team is very good about receiving feedback and communicating with the community. That being said, their goal with Ashes is not to create the same MMOs you see on the market today. They are trying to bring back some older concepts, get back to the root of MMOs, and iterate on it to make an experience that none of us have ever had before. Now, it's an ambitious project, to be sure. Even if they don't get everything right on the first time, you still have to respect that they're putting their best foot forward and they're trying to break the mold. And for that, I believe that the team deserves the benefit of the doubt until they prove otherwise. Now, for the PvP itself, it's supposed to be meaningful and to be able to catalyze change in the world. Steven believes that the concern for PvP and griefing is when the PvP is out of the player's control, which I agree with. I tried many different ways to reword and narrate on this segment in a few different ways, but honestly, I think Steven himself said it best, so I'll just play the clip from the stream.
Now, the reason I believe in player behavior that we have concerns about the ability for others outside of our control and consent to affect our gameplay is because oftentimes in games where that's the case, you run into a state of griefing. And it's often expressed that you can implement systems and rules in such a way where you curtail that level or frequency of griefing, right? But you can't completely eliminate it, that people will find a way. What is it? Life finds a way, right? That I guess essentially griefers are dinosaurs and they just eat you. No, I'm just kidding. Not the case. But what we tried to do, or what I've tried to do, is take a system that I experienced in the past and refine it in such a way where the large portion of griefing that had the potential to occur in previous systems is mitigated even further. And when we think about griefing and we think about what is griefing, griefing isn't necessarily the realization of risk, right? Risk is a healthy thing. Risk makes us value reward. Without risk, we would not pursue certain achievements because anybody could achieve them. Risk makes us have a sense of thrill or have some sense of anxiety, right? And those are all emotional responses that get elicited when risk is present. So risk isn't a bad thing. We like risk. Risk is good not just in PvP, but in PvE as well. When you can't always predict the environment or encounter that you're a part of, risk is something like, I've never seen this boss do that before, or these ads came at an ill-placed time, or there's a trap here that I didn't experience before. There's a lot of elements that risk introduces that keep gameplay less stale, that keep it more dynamic, that introduce environments where the unexpected can occur. That is a good thing. Now, the question is, when risk becomes something that doesn't stop other players from impacting your gameplay in a negative, harassing, and repetitive manner, that the motivation to do that action is less about their personal advancement and more about impacting your gameplay, because when they elicit the response of anger or rage from the player, they feel a sense of accomplishment. That, in my opinion, is what griefing is. It is outside of the expectation of the gameplay behavior that's being communicated in the design philosophy, right?
Mhm.
That is that is something that our system is intended to stop, but keeping risk still alive. And there's a fine line there, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to provide for the environment where player actions are unpredictable. And yes, they could impact gameplay, but you want to create a system that deters that player from reaping a reward from griefing, because when you deter them from that, the occasions in which griefing happens gets mitigated. That becomes very few, very less frequent, that a player is willing to accept loss as an impact for being able to affect another person's gameplay. And the corruption system that's in Ashes of Creation, I believe, will stop that behavior to a significant degree, to the point where it is a very minor, if not at all, experience situation for many players, but the risk is still there, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that requires testing. That's something that requires us in Alpha 2, in the betas, to see how we turn the dials of corruption, that the risk profile of corruption is high enough to reach the level of that deterrent, right?
Now, I do want to double tap on one of his points. The system still requires testing. We've never seen it in action. We don't know how it'll play out. The least we should do as a community is give them the chance to use their corruption system before we condemn it. Again, I just released a video on this topic, so I won't beat a dead horse in this video. Then there was a question. They moved on to when and how players will encounter PvP. The vast majority will be through the opt-in systems such as wars, sieges, caravans, and embarking on sea voyages, which is always open world PvP. Gonna have some Pirates of the Caribbean nonsense going on, which I am down for. These opt-in systems are where the motivation will be to fight other players. There is open world PvP, but the majority of players will not want to accept the risk of getting corrupted. That's the goal of the system. The developers agree griefing is bad, and they will change and tune the system as needed to avoid that being a viable playstyle. Now with that out of the way, we're on to the real meat of the update, gathering. Now I have not been an active gatherer or crafter since my RuneScape days back in the early 2000s. So I am curious if Ashes can get me excited for it again. Now the last time we saw a gathering update was last fall, so there have been some pretty significant changes since then. They've gone through huge leaps to make the visuals of gathering immersive. They made changes to the systems themselves. Now keep in mind, with the footage that's shown, this is still pre-alpha 2. Everything's still work in progress, yada yada yada, can statement, disclaimer. The videos themselves are about 30 minutes long, so if you want to watch them, they'll be up on the Ashes of Creation's YouTube channel. I will just play the footage in the background that is relevant to what I'm discussing. Now, of course, I gotta gush over the visuals here. The game looks so good, with the mist rolling in from the river, the sunlight beaming through the trees. What a world we are going to get to explore. Now, the first major point is that they've gone through great lengths to make almost everything you see in the world harvestable. If there's a rock or tree, you can probably harvest it. You won't have to run through the woods to find the 1 or 2 harvestable trees that everyone's fighting over. Now for the actual visuals of, say, chopping down a tree, check this out.
I love the new UI.
Oh, I know. And the sound. Get ready. It's happening. Oh my gosh. Look at the dust kick up. Look at the canopy of the tree get impacted. And when
The sounds of the axe hitting the tree, the creaking of it as it falls over, the dust that kicks up as it hits the ground. Mwah. Beautiful. And you can even see new trees sprout up. This is of course sped up on the developer's build, but we will get to actually see the trees regrow. Even better than that, where the tree falls actually matters. As you can see here, Steven chopped down a tree towards a boulder and it hits the boulder. Now the detail and effort they put into something as simple as this is astounding. Obviously it still has to be cleaned up, not the final build, but the effort they're putting into this is wonderful. Then they move on to mining a rock for some basalt. You can hear the clink of the pickaxe and see it fall apart as he finishes. In another rock there's some ore. When it breaks open you can physically see the ore in the remains of the rock. Now Steven didn't actually know what he would get out of these rocks until he finished mining it. And here's where the developers asked for the first bit of feedback. What do we think about having to crack open a resource before we know what is inside? They discussed a skill called surveying, which you would level, require some tools. You set it down in an area and then it can do different things depending on your level. But it would allow us to see and track down where certain resources are, or even how different resources behave in the different seasons and environments. Now for immersion's sake, I think this makes sense. To the untrained eye, you wouldn't know what a particular resource is just by seeing it from 30 yards away. So that part makes sense. However, if we have to mine every single rock and never know if we're going to get what we want, it could be frustrating. Not only just having to mine every single rock and wasting your time, but also having to manage your inventory, clean out all the basalt when really you wanted mithril. So I think surveying is probably necessary so that we don't waste our time doing that. I also think how the resources get laid out in the world will matter. If we crack open a rock and find some gold, can we reasonably expect there to be more gold in the area, or is it completely random? So this, I think surveying is a really good tool that could help get through this, and I guess will be necessary for all gatherers to level up, which I'm not upset about. Now I hope you're still paying attention, because this next segment is awesome. Everything that happens affects the health of the land. a score which we as players may or may not be able to see, but will affect what is available and by extension the economy of the game. Depending on how players are treating an area will affect the ecosystem, and the health of the land will dictate how fast or how slow resources grow back. This could be rotating your crops, getting rid of poachers, maybe there's a mayor quest, they get rid of certain pests that are eating certain things. And this is super interesting because they're including how ecosystems will actually interact with each other. If you overhunt predators, then the prey will be uncontrolled. Their spawn rates will increase, and they'll make the land barren of certain fruits and plants. But if you overhunt the prey, well, now the predators are going to be forced to leave and move on to a new area as they don't have any food. So now your different pelts and stuff are going to be low. I wonder if we're just absolutely careless and really destroy an area. If there's some sort of awakening of the woods event where the trees will come to life and try and get revenge.
Write that down, write that down!
Now, this sort of resource scarcity that can occur will force players to either migrate to another area to get what they need, and possibly encroach on another node's resources, which could trigger a war, or force trade to happen across nodes. If one node is connected to the ocean, has a ton of shipbuilders, but they're scarce on wood, they're going to have to reach out and get some wood imported to them so they can continue plying their trade. Now, Steven took the time to show us that a tree will kick up snow if it falls during the winter, but I'm more focused on the fact that his mount, this deer right here, did not despawn when dismounted. I don't know if that was intended, but I really hope it is. After seeing this whole update, I think my main concern is what kind of PC I'm going to need to run this damn game. And then finally, we had the Q&A session, which I've pulled the best parts out of and will play them now.
Dolium wanted to know about player corruption. Actually, all three of these will be player corruption oriented. They were asking, how will you address the possibility/inevitability of players purposely having low-level characters with max-level professions to mitigate against being ganked via giving more corruption/imbalancing the risk versus reward idea?
It's important to note that there are certain requirements that come with professions. Those requirements take into account the dangers and locations that are level dependent within the world. There are also some requirements when it comes to the ability to use certain types of tool sets and or surveying options that kind of make that a bit more difficult. But also, you know, the intent of the corruption system is to deter PKing, especially with the level disparity. And I wouldn't consider it necessarily an imbalance when taking into account players who wish to PK others that are significantly lower level than them, whether or not that's a result of the purposefully creating lower level alts that can utilize gathering, processing, or crafting profession advancements. Excuse me, or not. So, you know, the intent of that system is you engage with a player who has a significant amount of resources on them, and you view that as an opportunity. You're taking into account the added effect of that level disparity.
Can two-player caravans travel together to share in the defense? So you have one party of two different caravans. Can they kind of defend
I see.
together? Yeah.
So no,
This is from Overthrow.
each caravan is its own bespoke event, essentially, that you would choose to participate in, and you wouldn't participate in more than one at a time. Now, obviously, there are different sizes of caravans, and we haven't talked about how we've rejiggered the capacity systems and the new crate systems that we've introduced. But caravans have the ability to carry small, medium, large, or extra large types of of crates, essentially. And if you were wanting to run, let's say, things like a decoy caravan in order to try to get players to participate in the combat of that particular caravan, those are also valid tactics. So the intent isn't to have shared caravan participation.
Will the game's PvP instanced content, such as arenas, have level bracket caps, since the leveling process is intended to take a while?
They will have level requirements in order to participate in the arena, but they will not have um, uh, bifurcated brackets, essentially, that would have separate player pools. So you'll be a minimum level requirement in order to participate in the arena system. And if you achieve that minimum level requirement, you're able to participate in the same pool. Um, there will likely be some form of ELO system associated with arena participation that gets flushed on a seasonal basis as well.
Now that the shipbuilding profession is no longer exists, how will we build ships?
Ships are built in adherence to a recipe. That recipe requires components. Those components adhere to different professions, different crafting professions that require a player to kind of intersect and or craft or purchase those components from the different professions. And then once they have those accumulated, they can do the construction process through the recipe system at a harbor.
With risk versus reward as a central design element, will there be better materials, items, resources, etc. in areas with auto-flagged PvP, open sea nodes, ruins, than in a normal open world PvP area?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this when we discussed the update to the OpenSea flagging system. Is that the idea here is that better things in more abundance can be found in the OpenSea zone. And as a result, that is why there's an added level of risk associated with opting into those locations. So as players choose to enter the OpenSea, they're aware that the potential for reward is higher. And in order to keep relevant that equilibrium between the ratio of risk versus reward, we've decided to step up what that risk looks like in the OpenSea by changing the flagging rules.
And there you have it, your October development update. Tell me what you think about the visual fidelity, the surveying, the ecosystem, the resource systems. I loved it. I think the Intrepid team knocked it out of the park once again. It's all very interesting. I like the way it connects together into the greater systems of the world. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Really enjoy always hearing them and seeing what different players want to see out of the game. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more like it, leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me out, and I'll see you guys next time.